Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here, taking a look at this clip on our Edmentum YouTube channel here in Illinois. I'm Jason from Edmentum, Partnership Manager. And what we're going to do here today is to continue on this series of interviews, educator interviews, showcasing particularly right now what's happening amid the COVID-19 shutdown, the remote learning plan, or I should say the remote learning guidelines that were sent out by the State Board of Education. That's really what we're focused on right now. And Kevin and I and Tom were just absolutely thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Mike Lubelfeld, who is the Superintendent of Schools at North Shore School District 112 up in Highland Park. He is a published author. Most recent book was The Unlearning Leader from 2019. And he is an expert in the field of education. And Mike, right, a force to be reckoned with on Twitter, right? I would say.
I've used it once or twice.
Great follow on Twitter. So Mike, good morning. Thank you for joining us here today. How are you?
Good morning, Jason and Kevin and Tom. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be with you. Honored to be with you today. So thank you. Definitely adjusting to a new reality in face of the stay-at-home order and COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the truth, Mike. And Mike, really, we're particularly honored to have you on this interview today because you're so integrally, such an integral part of the process as the governor moved forward with shutting down the schools and being a part of the remote learning advisory group, being on that panel. So that's why we're so happy to have you here today. So maybe if you can just start out by telling us about your experience meeting with the governor, right, as he decided to close schools. You know, we were talking before we started the interview here about, you know, being in the background as the governor was holding his press conference. So maybe tell us a little bit about what that was like, Mike.
Thank you so much. That was a surreal and cool and really quite humbling experience. I'm blessed to have a lot of opportunities to do leadership support, leadership development around the state and around the United States with IASA and AASA. And here in Lake County, where I live and where I serve, I work with Brian Harris from Barrington. We co-chair the legislative advocacy for Lake County superintendents. So when I received the call to go and go to the State of Illinois Center in Chicago and be at the press conference with 3 of my superintendent colleagues, with the State Superintendent of Education, professionals from the medical world, and Governor Pritzker, it was an honor. It was a shock, and it was a call to service, call to duty. So went down there. The governor is extremely personable and kind, and obviously we've seen his exemplary leadership through all of this statewide and nationally. And what he was really doing was an unprecedented move to actually gubernatorially shut the schools and do this, March. At that point, it was on March 13th for March 17th to March 30. And it was really quite of a shock to the system to be up there as a representative of the superintendents of Illinois to show our support, appreciation, and admiration of this leadership. Was truly a humbling honor, and I really, I have amazing colleagues who are leading powerfully and passionately every day, and I have incredible staff who are doing all the work. I simply represent all of these people. I'm a tiny, small part of it. It was very nice to be there. I did get a little bit of a hard time for having the North Shore School District 112 laptop bag with, our brand 112 Leads, but it is what it is. And
then Mike, that sort of evolved then right into the next steps, right? So like you said, shock to the system, hard to believe that this was going to be the new reality, right, moving forward, and then this remote learning advisory group. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how that group came together, what it was like working with that large group of folks from the State Board of Education. Maybe speak to that a little bit too, Mike.
Sure, happy to do so. Representatives of the governor's office, deputy governor's office, members of the General Assembly reached out to the IASA and said, we'd like you to form an advisory group of people of all backgrounds and of all areas of the state. And Dr. Brent Clark, who is the executive director of the IASA, who's a visionary leader and just a tremendous person, and really, really great guy, and just someone who I admire and look up to, assembled the IASA COVID-19 SWAT team, and as superintendents from north, south, central, western, eastern, rural, suburban, everyone to get together to advise, the Deputy Governor Jesse Ruiz and the governor's office and everything on the superintendent's view of what's going on. As a result of that COVID-19 SWAT team, which has been putting out great communications and other things, excuse me, the State Board of Education has a representative on the SWAT team as well, and they were branching out and working with labor groups and other management groups, and they said, look, we're going to have to go from act of God, which is not really sustainable for the duration of the school year, to a new designation. At that point, it was not defined. We want a variety of voices to help provide guidance and advisory. So, pardon me, I was honored to be put on the one of the subcommittees, one of the elementary grading subcommittees, and together with teachers and principals and students and other superintendents and regional superintendents and university professors from around the state of Illinois, we spent probably the most intensive 72 hours any of us have ever spent listening, reading, reviewing, doing, and ultimately a very small part of a contribution to the, I think, 65 or 70 page remote learning guidance that also ties to a joint statement between labor and management, a second such joint statement in like a 2-week period, ISBE rules and regs, governor's executive order, and this guidance in a very, very compact period of time to advise and guide 852 school districts in the state of Illinois. It's awesome, it's intense, and I'm really, really proud to have been, again, a small part of that.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, just remarkable, right? Bringing all these folks together from all different parts of the state. And I mean, you guys did all of that remotely yourselves, right?
That's correct. None of us ever met in person. We were all on Zoom or Google Docs or, other collaborative tools. Yes.
As you guys all met, Mike, what were some of the things that maybe ended up in the document that folks who were part of the group, said, you know what, these are, for lack of a better term, right, non-negotiables. These are things that absolutely have to be in that document. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of those.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Jason. This was really a macro-micro approach. We were asked to take ourselves out of our roles and really step up to that 30,000-foot level and really look at what's going on. So this is an abrupt, chaotic crisis, for lack of a better, set of adjectives, that's going to create dissonance and adaptive change, which is very unusual and very difficult, and also scaled up on a statewide proportions we've never anticipated. And then we were asked to go into the micro level of our actual role and our actual jobs and our actual set of experiences, whether it's geographic or cultural or pedagogical, whatever. And then we were saying, okay, what are our statements that are going to be specific enough for the local district, wherever, to be able to take the guidance and roll? And what are our guidance in specific that is applicable to everybody? And what we did is we did what makes me really proud, and we focused on the student, the main stakeholder, the main customer, the reason we're all employed quite directly and quite honestly, and the only reason that we serve. Now, as leaders, we support adults who support the children. Make no mistake about it, so we kept that view as well. However, our non-negotiables involved students will not be harmed, no matter what, during remote learning. We don't know what it will look like everywhere because some of the districts did not have e-learning plans, so they weren't even ready for the 5 non-consecutive snow day concept that's been in statute. Some of them have a digital divide that we may not understand up here in Northeast Chicago, suburban Illinois, with fiber and high pipes and bandwidth. And others have complete poverty where there is very little to no access and a significant economic impact on the community. So the non-negotiables were no harm to students. We said there could be no F, no failing grade for anybody from birth to 22 during the remote learning period. We also asked people to put into context, Jason, that we've completed 70% of the school year in person already.
Sure.
So you've got, maybe 12 weeks remaining of quote unquote school. 2 of those weeks would have been taken up for standardized and local standardized assessments. Those are gone. There's also spring break. So in terms of the actual time left, there's no reason in our minds that any child should be harmed. We also had non-negotiables that the social and emotional health and general welfare of our teachers and educational support personnel must be acknowledged. Our teachers have spouses and significant others and partners who may be losing their jobs.
Yep.
Our teachers have children of their own who are going through some degree of remote learning. And as much as I'd like to say you're going to work from 8 to 5 and be synchronous online every day, that's simply not practical, nor is it appropriate. So that's a non-negotiable. And we also had a non-negotiable that to the degree possible, we were going to use whatever research and evidence we could muster up in a short period of time to make sure that we focused on not only the highest of achievers and those with access and those who can, but the most vulnerable and those with the least amount of access and those who are special needs, diverse learners, language differences, all of that, making sure that everybody was at an equal footing in all of our guidance and documents. So the non-negotiable was students and emotional well-being of staff, and education to continue in some form, no judgment. Those
Sure.
are, I would say, I could distill it to those three, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's specifically in there too, in the document, you know, about how making sure that kids are fed, right, and that they're safe. And I mean, just some of the language that was in the document was very specific to the most basic of needs, right? Keeping that as the main priority.
You know, my quick final follow-up on that. Illinois has about 2 million public school children. I don't have the number of private school or homeschool, but let's just take the 2 million. I do believe 54% of our 2 million children qualify for the free and reduced lunch program. That's a sobering statistic that not only slaps us in the face, but should grab us by the shoulders and shake us.
Yeah.
If ever there was a time to ameliorate the poverty gap in Illinois, now's the time. And I think we absolutely have a call to action to address that.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
So, Mike, you've really taken us through that process at the state level and talked about how those decisions were made considering everybody on the spectrum. Now let's bring it down to your local district and
Sure.
In District 112. What has been the reaction that you've seen from your educators, and how have they responded to this time?
Well, I really appreciate that, Kevin. I work with some of the finest educators, not only in the state, but in the country. I am so proud of our teachers, our educational support staff, our leaders, and our Board of Education. Since this crisis hit, and since I ordered the schools closed with the consent and support of our board abruptly on March 12th, a Thursday night, so we were out with no advance notice and no preparation. Friday the 13th, I know appropriate now, Monday the 16th, and then during the 3 Act of God days, then we went into parent conferences virtually and then into spring break. We were shocked into action. So fear, concern, disbelief, uncertainty, what does this mean? What are we doing? All of those emotions came forward. And also this week, March 30th through April 3rd, we are taking advantage of the state superintendent's call for up to 5 remote learning training days. We're putting those to good use this week in District 112. I personally was leading some Zoom training sessions, and I had over 250 of our 535 employees dropping into my training sessions this week, and there's a number of other sessions concurrently. So I'm gonna say it's a call to arms, a call to action, a real outreach to say, let's do this. Our labor unions have been really, really wonderful to work with, saying, okay, whoa, what does this mean? What are we doing? Let's process it. Let's think it through. We're doing what's called impact bargaining to bargain the impact on working conditions, because this is a change. We're all doing it arm in arm. It's a big shock to our system. We also have a parent community that ranges really from, why aren't you immediately teaching 8 hours a day synchronously starting on Friday the 13th, to leave us alone, we're busy, it's overwhelming for our family, so we're trying to communicate real clearly with our family. Quickly, in District 112, we have 4 priorities that have governed our actions during this pandemic, Kevin. Feed our children. We have 1,000 children on the free and reduced lunch qualification, so we've been making sure we can mobilize to feed all of our children, which we're doing. We have a partnership with Organic Life, our food service people. Next one was to provide for the general welfare and safety of our employees, 535 employees, plus the emotional health of our 4,000 kids who've been abruptly changed with no preparation. Third is to communicate clearly. You can accuse me of over communicating and I'll be guilty as charged, and I'll keep doing that. And the fourth is e-learning, which is really a huge deal, and that's what we're focusing on right now. So I hope I answered your question. The reactions have been every emotion under the sun.
that definitely answers that. And I think it's thanks for giving us that overview. I think that's how we're all feeling, really, probably house to house. You mentioned the word shock to the system, and kind of that idea that this is something that has been unavoidable, and a lot of times situations like this lead to innovation. What are a couple of innovations that are going on district-wide that you're really excited about during this time?
What I'm most excited about and most proud of is the openness to this change and the willingness of our teaching force specifically to make a transition and transformation from in-person on-ground teaching to remote learning, which is taking someone's technology skills and abilities from whatever it was to something far higher. The greatest innovation is going to be the providing of live synchronous drop-ins, live synchronous small group sessions, and ultimately I hope it evolves into live synchronous classes. Not the full spectrum of every class every day, but appropriate developmentally, progression of that. That greatest innovation is going to be providing lessons and facilitating learning out of the school and trying to address the needs of the many and the needs of the individuals in a completely lack of control physical environment. That's the largest innovation going on right now.
So this may really kind of be the next thing to think about it as you describe those innovations. How do you see this impacting next school year and the 2021 school year, and as we move forward from spring to summer to fall? What are some things that you anticipate looking forward?
The absolute greatest outcome of this is going to be confidence and efficacy in our teachers to realize they can.
Yeah.
They may have been afraid to use, and I'll just use technology as a real big umbrella word for now for a moment. They may have been afraid to use instructional technology to integrate it with their pedagogy and their teaching and learning. Well, that fear is gone because they have no choice. Mm-hmm. So when we do transition back at some point to in-person on-ground teaching, I hope there will be a transformative effect where they will now integrate a balanced approach of traditional methods that they used for years because they were able to what some would argue are innovative and others would argue are ubiquitous in the workforce, instructional technology in the classroom. I do sincerely hope they see also that students have greater self-efficacy, resilience, and ability, possibly more than any of us ever imagined or believed. Our students are called upon right now asynchronously to do tremendous work on their own and show tremendous self-discipline. And I believe our teachers are going to see student conduct and abilities that far outpace their possible past beliefs. And finally, I see that you're going to see an openness to innovation and change in terms of old-fashioned constructs like, quote unquote, the schedule. And we may actually see innovative school design emerge out of this, because if there ever was a time when rigid bells don't matter, it's right now today.
And so that's really exciting to see how that could shape our future. Is there one or two things that you would recommend for other districts or school leaders in the state of Illinois that you've learned from this, or even going forward? Just kind of a couple of things that you would say you really need to think about this, or you really need to consider this in this process.
Yeah, the first one is ask for help. Please don't think you need to shoulder the burden of transitioning abruptly to transformative and adaptive change, for which very few of us are prepared and experienced or exposed to, alone. Ask for help. Call others in the industry who do this for a living. Call others in your professional associations who are right here by the other end of the phone. Ask, read what other people are doing and borrow it, copy it, and use it. Communicate 10 times more, and I'm not joking, 10 times more than you think you need to with the exact same message. Communicate by SMS, text, email, video, podcast, audio, in person, in English, in Spanish, in any languages you have. Ask for help, communicate, learn from others. Those are three very direct pieces of advice for anybody I'm doing that. My team is doing that. We're doing that. And we're learning and we're growing literally on a day-to-day basis.
Great lessons. That's really helpful, and I think as we move forward, everybody's going to continue to learn, like you said, day by day. So, Mike, we really appreciate the time that you've given us this morning. We look forward to continuing to learn and continuing to learn as a greater education community. So we thank you. For those viewing, again, subscribe to the Edmentum YouTube channel, and we will look forward to learning from one another and growing and becoming better through this time. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. It was an honor to be with you.
Thanks, Mike.